How's it going, everybody? RazingHel here, and welcome back to another episode of Don't Starve Together MODlight, in which I try to highlight some of the more interesting mods that I've been playing around with in the past week or so. To get started with, we are going to be taking a look at a mod called Less Hungry Critters. It was created by Space Admiral Lakia, and its description is really quite blunt here. It says, "Shut up, kitty." So what this mod does, according to the workshop page, is it allows you to configure the amount of time it takes before your pet becomes hungry again after feeding it. There is also an option to make it so they will never become hungry again. So if you take a look at the configuration options here, they're pretty sparse, pretty straightforward, just one single option here, and it allows us to adjust the amount of time it takes for your pet, your critter, to become hungry. So by default, you have, the 2 to 4.5 days, which is the way it works in an ordinary game. But then there is also 5 to 15 days, 10 to 20 days, 20 to 30 days, and of course, infinite, for which the description of it is, "We're calling Animal Protection Services right now." So as you can see here, there isn't a whole lot to really demonstrate. A lot of what makes this compelling is here in the configuration, and I'm just going to set it up for 5 to 15 days. And I'm going to briefly show you what it's like in the world, because we can advance time in a world. It's just a little bit awkward, I guess you could say. Like any mod that influences something on a time scale is just a little bit more difficult to demonstrate as effectively as a lot of the other enhancements. So here you can see my little polar broodling, quite unhappy. It's currently hungry, and it will continue to make that noise. It's like any other pet. When it's hungry, it's going to constantly make noise around you, and you probably don't want that. So we're just going to feed it, and it should be happy now. You notice it's no longer making the animation, so it's like a standard pet, right? That what we can do here is continue to advance the game for a set of number of days to see how long it takes before the broodling becomes hungry again. So let's take it, let's go ahead 5 days here. That was 5 days later. It doesn't appear to be hungry. It's not making any hungry animations. So that's normally, with its normal settings, a critter would be hungry by this time. Well, let's give it 6 days. Oh, it's hungry now. It looks like it's hungry anyway. Okay, so let's go ahead and change the settings again. I'm going to change it to something a little bit more extreme, like never. Okay, so we want the pet to never get hungry, so set it to infinite and then resume the world again. Granted, these little polar broodling type creatures are probably some of the least annoying pets there are. Like the gobbler pet is probably the loudest one, but here, let's go ahead and feed the polar broodling. Should be happy now, and since we set it to infinite, let's test it out, because I've actually never tested it out to see if it works for infinite. So let's go at it like 5 days at a time. Seems to be fine. It is winter now, though. Another 5 days. That's been 10 days so far. Let's give it another 5 days here. Yeah, and as you can see, it's not hungry. It's not playing any hungry animations or anything. So that has mostly been taken care of, I think. But that should give you a general idea of the functionality of that mod and kind of why I like it. One of the main reasons that I shy away from pets more often than not is because anything that is sort of a repeated, annoying sound or action like that, I think can get on my nerves a little bit faster than it does for others. And the inconvenience of having to feed it, I guess, is also sort of a deterrent for me. So not having to worry about feeding it anymore sort of makes it more pet-like, the way I think it always should have been, because they don't really provide any sort of practical use in the world besides just being a fun pet to have along. So it really didn't make sense to me that there wasn't an option to disable their more annoying animations, or at least the sound effects. So this mod can do that for you. Sadly, it's only a server-side mod, so you're only going to really be able to use this on worlds that you or somebody that you know hosts. So it's a little bit limiting in that respect, but regardless of that, I think it's functionally pretty sound. Okay, the next mod that I'm going to be showcasing here today is called Food Allergies by Pixelated Inadequacy. It adds random food allergies to each player. So if you take a look here at the configuration settings, we have a couple of them. The number of allergens that exist in the world. Now, these are randomized as far as I'm aware. There's really no option here, at least in the settings menu, to configure them for like different weights on certain food types. Like maybe there is a higher likelihood of you being allergic to meat. But as you see here, we can adjust it quite a few different total allergens being present, all the way from 1 all the way up to 20. And the severity is for how extreme the effects of eating a food that you're allergic to will be. If it's severe, you're actually going to die whenever you eat something that you're allergic to. Moderate, it subtracts a decent amount of hunger and health, and then mild is just minus 20 HP. So I'm just going to keep those settings as they are, and I'm going to jump into the world and briefly demonstrate how food allergies work. So as I said before, one of the things about this mod that kind of sticks out is the fact that the foods that the players are going to be allergic to are entirely randomized. So you kind of have to go ahead and experiment a bit. I did a little bit of experimentation in the background here, and I discovered that at the very least allergic to eggs and to fish. And that means not only to the product itself, but also any foods that are made with it. So as you can see here in the inventory, I have bacon and eggs, and this will have just as much a negative impact on me as eating eggs would, for example. So I'll just go ahead and eat the eggs here. As you can see, down to 50 health, down to 75 hunger. And if I go ahead and eat the bacon and eggs, it is actually going to kill me. RazingHel was killed by bacon and eggs. I guess there's going to be a first for everything when using this mod. Obviously now most foods are not going to affect the player. And of course it depends upon the settings that you use when configuring this mod, which will help determine how many foods are going to be sort of off your menu, but I can see this mod being useful in the capacity of providing a bit more challenge to players who are already comfortable with the game and are looking to be challenged a little bit in terms of what their diet can consist of, right? Because if you're allergic to some extremely common food type like meat or monster meat, either of those are going to have pretty far-reaching implications on what your diet can consist of and how you are going to make the most of your game without those food types available in your recipe book. The last mod I'm going to be showcasing here is called More/Less Hounded by Neoria. It allows you to adjust the frequency of hound attacks in the overworld and worm attacks in the caves. So a lot of fun things here to look at in the configuration for this mod, a lot of different settings. We have one set here of 4 options for the hounds, and then a duplicate set here for the caves with the worm attacks. So to get started from the top, the Hound mode can be changed here. This will affect the type of attack pattern that these mobs will have. So for example, if you had it set to lots, every single hound attack would be at a heavy pattern. If you kept it at less, this would be useful for players who are still sort of getting accustomed to the game and find it difficult to deal with large hound attacks that the later game can throw at them. You could, of course, leave it to the default, which I had here. The Hound Timer basically determines how quickly the hounds are going to attack. Now, obviously, it is somewhat randomized. There is no way to 100% accurately predict when the next hound attack will arrive, at least without some sort of mod. So this can change anywhere from very fast to very slow. So if you find it easy enough to deal with the hound waves that are thrown at you, but perhaps you're not really keen on how quickly they can attack you towards the late game, or they're arriving like every few days, and it's just a general nuisance, you can tweak that. You know, all this kind of stuff without turning them off altogether. The Hound Multiplier is going to affect how many hounds are going to spawn. So you can either have it much less, much more, or the default. If you have much more, be aware that in the very early parts of the game even, you can get like 8 or 10 hounds in the very first attack. So that would definitely ramp up the early game challenge there. And then there was also the number of hounds. So this is a set number of hounds that are going to be added on to the default size of that attack. You can have, the default, you can add plus 3, minus 3, whatever floats your boat here. And like I said before, the bottom 4 options here are pretty much the mirror duplicate of the top 4 options, except it only applies to the worms that will appear and attack you in waves when you're down in the caves. So I'm going to keep that mod as is and resume the world, and I'm going to try to demonstrate this one as well. Let's go ahead and advance the world until we get more hounds. It's currently day 38. So if we do this one day at a time, I should eventually get some more hounds here. Whatever setting I made, I think it caused the hounds to spawn less frequently. So I might have to look into that later. So we have 2 hounds here so far. And another thing that I really like about the idea of this mod is, for me, like when I'm playing around and trying different things out, one of the more difficult scenarios to set myself up for is being attacked by waves of hounds, because by default, it's kind of difficult to spawn them in. They spawn in at a certain, like a randomized time, and there's no easy way that I've ever figured out to call a wave of hounds from the command line, from the console within the game, and I haven't seen any mods that do that either. So by having something like this set up, you know, the easiest way, of course, is to just keep advancing the game day after, like 5 days at a time or something, until you get another hound wave. But this will, like, this gives you some of the finest control over having like massive hound waves spawn in relatively early in game. I don't have to wait until like day 100 until I have a real absolute pile up of hounds. I mean, look at this. This is absolute madness, and it's only day 61. This is most certainly a larger sized wave of hounds. Adds to the challenge if you're interested in playing it like legit, but you're also, if you're interested in trying to devise certain scenarios and trap setups, whatever, you have certain contingencies in place for dealing with hounds. I think this gives you some great options in tuning that to see how hounds would react to a setup that you have for dealing with them based on the numbers that they have, all without needing to advance yourself into the ridiculously late parts of the game. Obviously, you know, hound waves kind of top out, I think, at day 75, day 100. I forget exactly, but I just found it to be interesting. And yeah, one of the best mods that I've seen that really allow you to configure how the hound wave works. So that's going to do it here for this MODlight episode of Don't Starve Together. As always, the links to the mods that I covered in this episode will be included in the description below this video. So if you're interested in any of them, go ahead and check them out. If you enjoy the mod, be sure to thank the creator for taking the time to create and share it with us. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching as always, and I hope to see you next time.